then how can we implement some policy or some incentives for the education system to improve?
That's a good question. I think it depends on which environment we're talking about, which country we're talking about. There are certain countries where it's already very easy to build innovative schools. The issue is not the regulators. It could be other things. The incentive is already there. It's just maybe not yet uncovered. The incentive is that it delivers better results with happier students. So I'm not sure. It's not something that needs to be, for example, subsidized. It's not more expensive. It's not like green energy where you have to say this is experimental and let me potentially subsidize it for 10 years until it has critical mass, and then I can remove the subsidies, and that gives it the boost it requires. So this is basically the knowledge exists. These schools already exist. They're just in little pockets here and there. They might not, or there might be bits and pieces in certain systems that we have to put together. And there might be different versions that work in different parts of the world, depending on the circumstances, the resources available, the space, the budgets, etc. So I would, as an entrepreneur, I focus immediately on what are the obstacles to remove. The incentives are there. I mean, the results are speak for themselves. It's just really doing it, proving it, and there are already parents and educators who are going to be early adopters of these types of systems because they've experienced these things themselves. They've seen how the current system doesn't work, and once they come on board and the results come out, then maybe the laggards, the parents who need a bit more proof to jump on board will follow. So it's already happening. I mean, the systems are changing. They're changing at the age groups that are easier to take a risk on. So it's at the early years when you talk about autonomy, freedom. You tend to get more leeway. As the pressure of getting into university mounts, the willingness of parents to take risks diminishes. So it gets more difficult as we get into alternative elementary schools, middle schools, high schools. Fortunately, at the younger ages where this is critical, as we said, because of the absorbent mind. So if you respect the intrinsic motivation of a child, show them that they can be autonomous, give them that confidence, they have that resilience, they can then enter into a traditional system and they will behave in a very different way than a student that is frustrated, doesn't understand what's the purpose. They will find purpose. Even if the teacher doesn't explain it, they will go and ask the questions. They'll go, why? So someone might say to you, this is the way you do this or that. But if you're that type of student, you'll go and figure it out. There must be a reason why it's that way. And so you kind of yourself make your education more purposeful. And I think that's what's going to continue to happen until schools are available to support that even more. So I think it's happening. It's changing. It is a little bit slower than, for example, IT developments. Someone invents a new technology for a phone, and within a couple of years, every manufacturer on the planet has rolled it out. Education, it goes a bit more slow, but I think once it hits a certain critical mass, it will become the new norm, and that will take a bit of time. But the movement is already happening. There are bits and pieces happening all over the world already, and yeah, I'm sure it'll continue.
I just have a quick question about, so let's say we'll use the two differentiating terms of an innovative system and the original system. So we'll take, let's say, your nursery as the innovative one and every other, just for the sake of the analogy, as the original system. So you were saying, okay, for nurseries, it's less risk because we can still use this innovative system, but then parents don't have to worry about their child not being able to conform with the original system of middle schools and high schools, because they still know the fundamentals of math and they can then still pass the SAT. Looking then at designing a high school, do you think it's going to be, if you were to hypothesize the plan of how these up and coming innovative schools are going to form, do you think it's going to be an innovative school that comes along and says, okay, we're going to be innovative in this way, but if your child graduates from our school, they can still go they can still go to university, which is, we'll call the original system? Or do you think it's them just they're gonna do their own thing completely, ignore university, so you're not gonna be worrying about getting SAT scores, and you're not going to be worrying about doing AP tests and meeting the eligibility requirements of universities? And do you think they're going to just set on their own course? And what would that look like? And if there is an innovative high school created, but no university or no continuing education set up, what will that look like?
Yeah, it's a great question. I definitely think it's going to be the route of this works better even in the current system. And as I said, with the example of the tomato, so it's not that tests shouldn't exist. As I said, it's how you use those tests. So this is more about the mindset of those schools and how they go about doing their things. Wanting children to learn and then assessing if they did learn is absolutely a part of the system. And the SAT test do I think the SAT test is the right test for every single major out there? No, I don't think. A student that wants to go into art needs to go through the entire SAT test as it is today. But do certain majors, is it a good test for certain competencies? Absolutely. And that should be the logic of any test that remains. One is, how useful is this? If we were thinking of, rather than thinking of university as it is today with this SAT test, you imagine the Olympics with a 100-kilo snatch, or what's the maximum weight you can snatch, and what's the maximum speed you can run, right? Let's say those were the two tests. Now the Olympics has boxers and weightlifters and horse riders and javelin throwers and just so many different specialities. Sometimes those tests don't really correlate with with really checking how successful would these students be in those fields. So I see it the same way. I see that, yes, there will be assessments, but we have to have discussions about how useful are these assessments for what we want to do, And certain things you can imagine, I might be presenting a portfolio of work rather than a math test. I can definitely see for engineering and finance, absolutely. Is there a need for it? There is, but for others, not so. And the second, even more important thing is how are we using those assessments? And it's not just one final assessment, but all along the way, how are we using those assessments to see if the children are developing, the students are developing or not? And then the onus is on us, on the adults, to change what we do. So that's why the classroom has to be this dynamic space. The adults have to be open, the teachers, to those assessments are for you, not to rank students, but they're for you to readjust, how you're doing. These children did not connect with math. What do we need to do to get there? How do we change things around? How do we get them interested? And I think the system, and this is how it works today, the system has to work where, unfortunately it does, the children, the students are better off going through the more natural approach later into a traditional approach. They will do better than others, or better than what they would have done had they gone through a traditional approach. So if you've spent 3 years with people fostering your intrinsic motivation, your autonomy, and then you go into a traditional school where maybe a lot of that goes away. You have to go to the bathroom, you need to ask for permission. You have to, everything needs a permission request. But you've practiced it for 3 years. You're able to reconnect with that much more easily than someone who's never had it. Now, if you've practiced it for 6 years, even better. You can take a child at age 6 who goes then into a traditional school. You can actually talk to them about it because they're at old enough. You can say, there are new rules in this school. In this school, they expect you to do this and that. And it's not affecting who you are as a person. It's like you travel to a country where, or you go to the beach and you walk around without a shirt in your shorts. Then you go to the shopping mall. You might not dress that way because there's a different protocol, but you yourself didn't change. Your identity didn't change. You're just adapting to the circumstances and the environment around you. So I think absolutely the alternative systems have to continue working in the traditional system, and they do if they're done the right way. So you should perform better at math. There should be no compromise. This should not be, you have a happier child, but they're not going to be very strong at math, which is why we like the approach that we follow, which is complete, which had both. Certain systems might say, we'd rather not, math is only for certain people. We think math is beautiful, and everyone would love math if they were taught math in the right way. Math is a way that humans figured out how to control their environment. It's a universal tool. It's just teaching it in the right way and allowing a child to self-construct their knowledge. So the SAT then becomes a project. If you've gone through a schooling system where your autonomy is fostered, etc., and then you say, look, there's this SAT and that opens up a door to something. It becomes a project. You go tackle it, you break it up into pieces. But if you've got that character, if you've got the autonomy, if you've got the thinking, first principles thinking, asking what's the purpose of what I'm doing, and you sit through those very same lectures in the same universities, you will get out of it far more than someone who's just, what I see is they've either bought into the system and they're just chasing the grades, or the ones that have kind of checked out of the system and are just sort of struggling along, trying to wait until the day that they don't have any or they drop out or whatever it is. But someone who has practiced self-constructed knowledge will sit through those very same lectures and the beautiful content, the beautiful books but they will look at it in a different way. They will, embrace it in a different way. We can go through a history lesson in an extremely, boring, what date did this happen, and this and that, or you can engage in it, and we can watch a movie about a historical event, and and master that knowledge. And you'll know the dates because you're interested and you've kind of connected the dots of when World War I and World War II, because this happened, blah, blah, blah. And you're getting the grades in this traditional system, but you're getting out of it in education. So, and once a better university comes out, then great, you go to that university, and now all the professors are encouraging you to self-construct. So it's not just you. So the answer is, it's transitional, definitely. It's incremental. It should work in the current system. It should work better. Not there's no compromise. And all of it will be improved. And that will just be another layer of more and more potential being fulfilled. Just a small example of that. You've had teachers in your school that have used the flipped classroom approach, which is one example of these alternative methods where children are encouraged to self-construct their knowledge. So you had to do the reading outside of class, come in and be ready to discuss and answer questions and think and debate. And then the essay, you could just rattle it off because you really understood the topic, you practiced debating it, and then when your opinion had to be expressed, it just came out very natural, right? And you can imagine that if you go to another classroom that's not taught that way, you can still try to figure out how to understand the topic deeply. You might have to do a bit of extra work yourself, or you just say, listen, this topic, I'm not interested in it. I'll just do it that way, and I'll get the grade. And so you just have more control over your own destiny. You at least have that option. Whereas if you're just in the system and not understanding what's going on, you don't even have that option available to you. Of course, if you and the system are working together, so much better.